Today's chat is brought to you by the support of our Twitch subscribers. Through the patronage you provide the Focus Fire chat team through the Twitch platform, we are able to provide you with a weekly podcast as well as the website and other aspects of Focus Fire chat. If you have any interest in becoming a subscriber of the FFC and gaining access to some exclusive features over in the Discord server, please be sure to visit our Twitch account and click on the subscribe button. Remember, if you're an Amazon Prime member, that you do have a free subscription to Twitch every month that can be used for this. And for those of you who are already subscribers, thank you again for your generosity. You may have heard the whispers of guardians gathering in the shadows, exploring the mysteries of this world and the worlds which surround us. We are all in search of truth. Sometimes we need to focus that search, focus that fire. And so we come together. Join us. Join the discussion. Welcome to Focused Fire Chat. Welcome back for episode 136 of Focus Fire Chat, recorded live on June 29th over on twitch.tv/FocusFireChat. As always, want to give a big shout out to our live chat here with us tonight. Thank you so much for joining us once again. Our topic for tonight's episode is going to be a look at Exos. But first, let's run through a quick introduction of those on the show with us tonight. As always, this is your host, Blue Crew 86. We also have the man who, it has been said, has the voice of a flower, an individual who goes by many different names, Just Insane 0516. What guys do you have on for us tonight, Justin?
I am not prepared.
That's a really long name.
That's like 2 weeks in a row.
It's
like what's wrong with you?
That's a really long name.
Hang on.
No. This one right here is from last week.
Yeah, I know.
I was prepared last week. I had a name.
Yeah, but you have to think about it for a little while. I remember the show. I was there. I understand how it went.
So.
How about here? I got
what
one.
I'm getting from you is you're outlawing thought.
No. Here's what I'm thinking. I think your name should just be Thumbs Up because of the ending to Terminator 2.
I was gonna be Brian She 44, but I don't know now.
You're welcome.
You can be Texo.
Yeah.
Oh, ow. Ow. Okay, like, I understand dad jokes and everything, but Green, come on.
Hashtag green jokes.
Yes.
Just in case anyone listening to the actual podcast is really confused right now, I usually have a name that's displayed in our Discord server for whatever show we're doing that's a play on the title, but I spent way too much time reliving my childhood in the 30 minutes leading up to showtime, and you can thank Green Eyed Music Lover for that. So, yep. And also, hot dogs are hot dogs. They're not sandwiches.
For more on this, listen to Top 3 by FFC. I think that episode's coming not next week, but the week after.
Or just take a hot dog out into the world with you and say, hey, want a sandwich? And hand it to people. See their face.
That's going to get real awkward real fast.
Next up, we have our own master of social media, the one and only Green Eyed Music Lover. Green, I know that you're actually doing well. How's the week treated you so far?
It ended on a high note. A real high note.
Oh, really? What happened, Green?
Oh, we're gonna talk about this now?
I mean, we could introduce Beard first.
Let's introduce Beard first before we get into what happened today.
Okay. Well, real quick.
You know what happened to it.
I don't know what end is up right now, okay?
Hey, but you have food, so that's all that matters. So,
I had food. It's all gone.
It's all gone now. Well, rounding out the usual team, we have the grizzly bearded cultivator of Spinfoil himself, Beard Grizzly. Beard, how are you doing tonight? Well, I guess
we already talked about
we already talked about this.
We already talked about this, Blue. We already talked about this. Stop being such a robot. Good grief. It's like you're an exo or something. God. Freaking were you built by Clovis Bray too? Is that what I have to go over here at this point?
We are Legion. So going back to Green real quick. Green, you want to talk about, I guess we usually, like, I actually have this in the show notes as a segment, but we don't really ever have a reason to bring it out. But we do have a kind of I guess this would kind of be a special announcement, though. It's more of an update on current events in lore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there's been hints dropped by a certain writer at Bungie fairly regularly, and it kind of took a different turn today about there being something in the Curse of Osiris lore tabs that we had missed that's been staring us in the face since Curse of Osiris came out. And frankly, I kind of got in midway through when this whole thing started. Our Discord chat picked up on it sometime this mid-morning this morning, and I just happened to pop in there in our Spinfoil chat, and they were discussing it. And I saw some of the hints that were given. And what ended up happening is I ended up finding this mystery card and I guess you could say decoding it, even though it's not really any sort of code. It's right there staring you in the face. Anyway, I found the secret message that is in the Telesto lore entry update, or like lore tab, if you're going to call it that. That basically, if you look at the section where it says message starts to where it says message ends, all the words in between those two create a sort of secret message that the first letter of each of the words makes a message, and I don't have it up because I have my stuff up for Ask FFC, so give me 30 seconds to find my own tweet. And open! It says, Crow untrustworthy, desires power. So it's the secret message from, this is from Paladin Kamala to Petravenge, and she put a secret message in there for Petra to say, don't trust the Crow, or don't trust Crow, because he desires power. So that's been a whole fun thing, and it got certified and verified by multiple Bungie writers. I've had a few Bungie writers retweet it, which is really cool. I heart Jill Shar. Just she's like my spirit animal via writer. But yeah, that's the cool news that happened today. Cool thing that happened today. And my Twitter feed has not been the same since Beard, Bife, and Mylan and a bunch of the different ones tweeted it out. It's like, oh, great. Anyway,
Rip
everybody
your inbox.
else. Yeah, it was terrible.
Yeah.
Like, I'd go away
Bife will
for
do a
5
number
minutes.
on that.
Bife, yeah, talk to Justin about that.
Oh my god. I was gone 5 minutes and I had 250 messages. I was like, shh.
At least it was business hours.
This is true. For us, at least. Yeah.
I gotta say, now you know how I feel on a daily basis. We put it that way.
Oh.
Ooh.
It's tough being bred.
Yes, except
Oh
now
my
I'm
gosh.
toast.
And he gave me a wry smile.
Well, so I mean,
Well,
yeah.
Can we turn the show around?
Can we turn the show
please?
around? No, I think that was a really cool development to kind of just watch unfold in between the insanity that I was going through today. But last week we actually did have a question. It was what? Oh my gosh, I just blanked on it. Green, I know I asked you, and I just blanked on it again. What kind of memories? Yeah, what kind of memories do Exos have? And so I'm sure there were some super serious answers, right?
1 second. Sorry. Yes. Sorry, I was trying to answer
She's
something
answering.
in chat.
She's answering more questions about the thing that she figured out.
Well, okay.
And she's super proud of herself.
I am
because I
proud of
didn't have
myself.
time to dig into anything.
I am proud
Gosh,
of
Green.
myself. Jesus, Beard, give me a second. So in full disclosure, I was not the only one to figure it out. Cal9 also figured it out 1 minute after I did.
So everyone note though, Cal 9 was also the one that had the wizardly status last week.
Yes.
Yeah. World's second.
Second.
Anyway, but yeah. So
It
what
just
kind of
frankly tells you about like scholarly debate and everything like that. Quite frankly, it isn't about who's there first. It's just about like figuring out the information. Like, let's be clear about that for a second.
It totally is.
Yes, that was completely tongue in cheek.
Yeah, like it.
Totally.
It's as I have made abundantly clear. I don't care who has covered a topic first off. If you have something unique to bring to the table to it, or you're able to spread the word on something otherwise, do it. You have no reason not to, especially if it's going to be something that's going to be like bringing something really cool to the table. There's no reason not to share it, like at all. This message actually opens up some stuff about Forsaken that I had already been like thinking in the back of my mind was going to be there. It just confirms it, and I cannot wait to talk about that stuff. But it just confirms it.
It does. It's exciting. It is very exciting, and props to Cal for figuring it out. Like, if you look in both, it was Destiny's Ghost Stories Discord where Cal posted his and I posted mine in our Discord under Game Spoilers. They're a minute apart. It was simultaneous, and I'm sorry for cussing, but it was really, really simultaneously happening, which is amazing. And not only were FFC and Destiny Ghost Stories working on it, Beard's channel was working on it, Ishtar Collective was working on it. We had most of the community who was around this morning was actually working on it.
Yeah, trying to keep it as quiet as need be for, just the sake that it is just one of those like cool things. It's one of those like ludicrous things. It's like, here's a writer that's telling you some stuff about what you should be looking for. And of course, you're just like, well, what do I look for? Now I'm confused. But yeah, it's just when stuff like I said this once about this community before when we had this stuff from like Chris Barrett, if you guys remember that a couple months back before Warmind was launched. We had those tweets that he was sending out. The fact that everybody jumped on board the way they did and started thinking about stuff and started to like decoding messages, going through different hash scripts, this, that, and the other thing. Like, I cannot say enough that this community is better together than it is apart. And it is probably one of the best things about this community. Is just the simple fact that we will figure things out together and try to, we're not here to one up each other, regardless of what everybody might want to think. It's just a matter of figuring out information that is on a whole, just figuring out this puzzle that is Destiny's lore.
But back to question of the week. Sorry. A little bit of divergence that's happening. What kind of memories does an Exo have? So I asked for both serious answers and funny answers for this one because, why not? There were some really good, well thought out answers about coming from a human mind. They would have memories similar to humans, but with a new body comes with new senses, new pains, and new pleasures that may interpret stimuli. Interpret stimuli different than their human body. From the weapon one-on-one syndicate, I knew an Exo could taste velocity. Said his favorite flavor was 1 kilometer per second. Another flavor text alludes to this Exo experience synesthesia, which is actually one of my favorite topics from when I learned in college, which causes one sense feeling to be triggered by some other sense. So a very common one is for musicians to see colors when they're listening to a piece of music. The sense of listening, hearing, triggers the sight, the possible sight thing. That's actually from Cal 9. Very well thought out answer from Cal, who's been kind of the hot topic lore guy this week. As far as a funny thing, There are some things I cannot say on this show that came up. Something about your mom.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Well,
But
that doesn't surprise me. What?
Dorothy Mantooth is a saint.
There's something about Bender as well that showed up.
Hmm.
If you like Futurama. And then my favorite, what kind of memories do Exos have? Solid state.
I love that one.
It's like, well done, sir. Well done, Josh Niesel.
Yeah, okay, I'll give you that one.
And that was really good. That was
give you
really
that
good.
one.
It took me a second to even get that, because like, what? Oh! I don't work on computers. Anyway.
Oh, man.
Yeah. So, what about next week's question of the week?
Do you want to do a question of the week for next week, since it's going to be the extra lore episode?
It's Star Wars.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to do a poll for this one? Get a little dangerous?
I mean, I already tried to kill you with Halsey, and that didn't really work, so...
Well, I mean, yeah.
Your
But people
Twitter, your Twitter feed, where it was pretty docile.
They're pretty, I don't know, we'll see. Star Wars fans can be pretty rabid.
Really? It's not like they chased someone off Instagram. Oh, wait.
Anyway, if there's a question of the week, you'll see it pop up on my Twitter
Yeah, we'll
feed.
have to
just do it
figure one
that
out.
way.
We're not so quick on other series lore.
Yeah. But, yeah. So.
Oh, man. All right. Well, as always, yeah, like Green said, keep an eye out on Twitter for that question when we get that one up. And I know everyone is definitely looking forward to diving into this discussion, so we're going to run through our standard intro notes, and then we'll get right into it. In our last episode of Focus Fire Chat, we discussed Ares 1. If you ever miss an episode and would like to catch up, please be sure to check out FocusedFireChat.com for archives, articles, and links to the other aspects of Focused Fire Chat. If you don't mind, please rate and, if you can, review the show on iTunes, Podbean, or whichever podcasting app you use to enjoy podcasts. Reviews are extremely helpful, as they not only let us know what to do better, but help us stay on the charts, which helps others find our amazing community. To those of you who have already taken the time to leave us a review, thank you. As many of you already know, Focus Fire Chat is a cross-community gathering, where the intent is to offer a week-long, in-depth view of a particular subject from within the lore of Destiny and other games. This chat begins every Tuesday morning and runs until the following Tuesday, with topics decided by the group via a poll that begins every Friday and ends on the Tuesday morning of the new chat. Every Friday, at around 10 p.m. Central, we get together to stream a high-level summary of the previous week's chat for those who are unable to participate. Please be sure to also give some support to the other podcasts in the Guardian Radio Network, links of which can be found in our show notes or on our website. If you're a fan of lore in all its various forms, please be sure to check out thelorenetwork.com, where you can find a wide variety of some amazing content covering a number of different titles and mediums. Our next chat is going to be a discussion on our extra lore topic for June, Star Wars. Note that there will not be a poll this weekend due to GuardianCon 2018. With all this being said, here's Green with a high-level summary of tonight's topic.
I'm a soldier. I was forged by other hands and forced into the role of warrior. According to my scars, I fought and fought. Besides bits and flashes, every battle has been forgotten, but I have this clear, awful sense that others died. In my unit, every soldier was killed except for me. Yet despite 1,000 chances to be shredded and scrapped, here I stood, no weapon in my hands, making fist out of habit, but with nothing to hit. Now I have new wars to fight. Sure, the Cabal and Fallen take up most of my time, but my greatest battle is not fought with paracausal powers. Do you ever wonder who you were before? Do you ever look at yourself and say this second birth is less of a desperate chance at redemption and more of a curse? I don't desire to know who I was before my second self. I know that's weird, but I want to know what kind of person would impart so much influence on who I was that they convinced me to sell myself to be part of whatever cause. Or was it much more simple than that? I am human. Well, at least my origins are. No, that's not right. Well, I mean, it's right, but it doesn't feel as big as it actually is. I guess it's easiest to say I was, but in many ways, still am human.
Before we jump into the information and thoughts that the community had about Exos, however, let's have a quick chat about this week's Lost Lore. Okay, so I think that the easiest way to kind of segue in between Lost Lore and this week's topic, we kind of were talking about this pre-show with the live chat. I kind of want to go through a brief history on the concept of what's called the positronic brain. Anyone who has been, or anyone who is a fan of the sci-fi, genre probably has heard of this term, but I don't know how many people actually know like the actual the history of it, and it's a very interesting history. So to kind of pull back a little bit and talk about a concept that exists outside of the game of Destiny and more in just general science fiction. A positronic brain is basically a fictional technological device that was actually originally conceived by Isaac Asimov, who was a science fiction writer. It functions as a central processing unit for robots and in some unspecified way provides them with a form of consciousness recognizable to humans. So when Asimov actually wrote his first series about robots it was about 1939, 1940, the positron, which is also known as the anti-electron, is basically the antiparticle or the antimatter counterpart of the electron. They can be generated by radiation or radioactive decay emission through weak interactions or by pair production from a sufficiently energetic photon, which is interacting with an atom in a material. So they had just been discovered. This was a newly discovered particle. And so the buzzword positronic actually added what many writers would call a contemporary gloss of popular science to the concept. You see this in the short story Runaround, where Asimov elaborates on the concept and then also kind of introduces the idea of the three laws of robotics. So the thing to remember about a positronic brain is that it cannot ordinarily be built without incorporating the three laws. Any modification thereof would drastically modify the robot behavior and behavioral dilemmas resulting from conflicting potentials set by inexperienced and or malicious users of the robot for the three laws make up the bulk of the stories that we see from Asimov that concern robots. Asimov actually remained pretty vague about the technical details of the positronic brain, which for obvious reasons, because it was a made-up concept, except to assert that their substructure was formed from an alloy of it's called platinum iridium. They were said to be vulnerable to radiation and apparently involved a type of volatile memory, and this is mostly because robots in storage required a power source to keep their brains alive, which is even today you see that quite frequently with androids, portrayal in science fiction. The focus of Asimov's story was actually directed more towards the software, such as, again, the three laws, than the hardware in which it was implemented. And it is stated in his stories that basically to create a positronic brain without the three laws, it would have been necessary to spend years redesigning the fundamental approach towards the brain itself, which actually I want you to keep in mind because in later iterations of cyborg and android technology and science fiction, that is actually something that gets explored. And mostly the reason that gets explored is because the three laws were also really a really big bottleneck in what was called brain sophistication. So basically the reason why is very complex brains are designed to handle world economy and would interpret the first law in expanded sense to include humanity. as opposed to a single human. And so this is where we later see in works from Asimov, such as Robots and Empire, the introduction of the zeroth law, which we kind of talked about. I think we talked about the 3 laws of robotics the last Exo episode. So at least one brain constructed as a calculating machine as opposed to being a robot control circuit was designed to have a flexible childlike personality so that it was able to pursue difficult problems without the 3 laws inhibiting it completely. And then you would have specialized brains creating and overseeing world economics that were stated to have no personality at all. And this was kind of the way that Asimov kind of dodged the bullet and got around that bottleneck for the 3 laws. So there was also, under specific conditions, again, since Asimov explored software more than hardware, he did allow for specific conditions within his science fiction, universe in which the 3 laws can be obviated with obviously a modification to the actual robotic design. So, and I kind of mentioned this earlier, is this has a very big impact on in science fiction in general. And so to kind of give you an idea, some other references to positronic brains specifically, you see that it's in Doctor Who, you see this in Star Trek, The Avengers, the Marvel series, I, Robot, the 2004 movie, Spectre Man, your Mystery Science Theater 3000, Buck Rogers. What's that?
Nothing.
Buck Rogers in the 25th Century, Bicentennial Man, and then Perry Roden, which is actually a German sci-fi series that was started in 1961. And so other authors and content creators or creators in general have built on this idea, many of which to look to escape the confines of the 3 laws. You see this predominantly in the Star Trek universe, as well as later development in different terminology to describe a similar phenomena in the development of robotics. So, in the universe of Destiny, we see this development in the vein of engram technology, a way of storing data that surpasses anything that we know in today's world. And this is where we see the introduction of the what quote slippery irreality of light comes into the picture, and where potentially we can see an explanation of why risen exos might have a different experience in regards to their memory, because of the basis of how they created what was basically referred to as the exo brain within the ghost scan of the core terminus concierge AI. The cool thing about this is, and this is kind of where I had tweeted out earlier today, the cool thing is in today's world, there is quite a significant amount of research into what's called the storage capability of the brain. And if you've listened to a couple of our shows, like way back, you'll know that we've talked about memory storage units being considered engrams. This is actually a terminology for neurobiology that is actually used. The cool thing about the human brain is that your brain, as a general rule, is made up of about approximately 100 billion neurons. Mm-hmm. That means that there's an estimated capacity to be somewhere between anywhere from 10 to 100 terabytes, though actually if you take into consideration the full spectrum of neurobiology, that is actually more along the lines of 1 terabyte to something called 2.5 petabytes. To kind of put this in scope, 1 terabyte is 1,000 gigabytes. 1,000 gigabytes is obviously 1 million megabytes. 1 petabyte is 1,000 terabytes. So your brain is able to store roughly the amount of information that can be found in 4.7 billion books. Now, the reason why that your brain is able to store this much information is actually not because of the number of neurons, but because of the way that the information is stored. Human brain actually stores information in a very unique way that's a stacked manner. So even though we only have 100 billion neurons, which is a good number, but there are actually creatures out there that have a little more neurons, we compress and store the data in a much more organized and much more efficient manner, which allows us to actually not only store that information, but recover it. Now, that being said, it is possible to overload your brain. Anyone who has done a study session and crammed for school knows that this is the case. So it is possible to overload your brain with too much information. This is why we need to take the time to process, make sure that we collect the information and analyze the content to make sure that our brain, in its own unique fashion, has been able to store that information in a way. And so you see a lot of this coming out of what there's a place called the Salk Institute, and their research is really what's kind of leading, or was leading the charge a year or so ago. I'm pretty sure they're still up in the cutting edge area. But an individual there named Paul Reber went on to say that it's almost impossible to quantify the amount of information in the human brain, in part because it consists of so much more information than we're consciously aware of. Not only facts and faces and measurable skills, but basic functions like how to speak and move, and higher order ones like how to feel and express emotions. And then he went on to say that we still don't really know how to scale up from computing synaptic strength to mapping out these complex processes. And I'm going to use that as a segue to kind of introduce us back into the concept of exoscience, because it's through the discovery of engrams that we actually kind of see this bridge, this synaptic bridge, ironically, created within the Clovis Bray exoscience division, because it's because of the way that they can store information within the engram that it allows them to create the equivalent of a positronic brain. Now, what I would argue, kind of going into a more argument stage here, is I'm curious if the exos are bound by any laws of robotics, because the thing with the positronic brain is that it's programmable. This kind of gets into the question of, do exos have programmed memories? Do they have false memories? Do they have, or is an exo brain an exact, just simply replica of a human brain? Or is it been modified to be certain, more efficient in a certain manner or way? And that's kind of where I know Beard will probably jump in with some of the darker theories of, Clovis Bray and the connections and possible ramifications of that type of thing. But that is, in a nutshell, a quick history of the concept of a positronic brain. So I don't know, Green, do you want to kind of jump in and kind of explain what a basic summary of some of the new information about exos, or maybe a refresher on what an exo is?
If you're listening to this podcast, you probably have seen an exo at least.
Right. Well, that's fair. That's fair. I mean, I guess in the lore, what is an exo? Where do we get exos explained in the lore, I guess? Like,
we do have cards from vanilla Destiny 1 about exos. Basically, they were kind of dark back in Destiny 1, because it presents this idea of these machines that are built for war, but they don't know their purpose now. Like, they assume that they were built for war. They're not sure if they're human, but they have human-like aspects, or like quote unquote feel things, kind of like a human does. And they are just a playable race in Destiny. You know that. Most people know that. Exos. See, okay, I kind of disagree with your note that you put in the thing, saying that they're from Earth.
Yeah, I should have said where they're from humanity.
Yes,
because I put that in there, and I was not meaning like Earth proper. I was thinking the order in which we're introduced, like the historical order of introduction of races into the universe. Is that wordy enough? Can I make that any more confusing of a statement?
They are. I mean, if you're going to speak as humans are the original origin of everything else beyond that, then exos were created. Then after exos awoken were
right. That's kind of where I was.
Yeah.
Yeah. Created. That's a perfect tone for Awoken's creation process, because we don't really have confirmation on that. But yeah, that's actually where I realized as soon as you clicked on your cursor, went down, I was like, that's probably not as clear as I thought it was.
But they were invented during the Golden Age, and there are survivors of the collapse in the Dark Ages. Now, do we have examples of exos not being guardians?
Fellwinter. Take Ashraven. was a Lord of Iron that was an Exo. Fellwinter obviously was a Exo.
What about Gaunt and Banshee? Is Banshee technically a Guardian?
Banshee, I would argue Banshee is not a Guardian because simply fact, I think the commonality that I've kind of come to, this is all my assumption. I will be completely honest. As far as we know, Banshee is not a Guardian. I think that the other thing that kind of aligns with that assumption is the fact that every single vendor that we have access to is not a Guardian. Like, well, is
Lakshmi?
I always cannot remember. Is Tess a Guardian, or is
No.
Tess just an Awoken? Tess is just an Awoken,
She's just
right?
an Awoken.
Okay.
He's a snippy Awoken.
Yeah, I know. Hey, Claudia Black is an amazing individual. Okay,
She's more like needs to get thrown off the tower Awoken.
Hey. That personalities of the characters aside,
Never know where that Finchurch may be.
I think those lines are hilarious. Anyway, there's one that we haven't mentioned that is got some recent developments herself, the Exo Stranger, who is not a Guardian that we can
that's
tell.
true. Yes. Yeah. Well, and that's according to her as well.
Yep.
So, as far as Guardians / people that we know most commonly, obviously Cade 6, Shiro,
Rip.
Shiro 4, yeah. Pour a drink out for that guy. Ariana 3.
Takeo 3.
Takeo 3. Yeah.
Takeo 3, yeah. I mean, there's
another cry on that.
Yeah, I
one.
know, that's it.
But those are the most common ones that we knew from D1. Quite a few of them have crossed over to D2, which is nice. The one line that everyone gets stuck on the most when it comes to Exos, which I think is fun, was it a search for immortality? I think somebody wanted to try to live forever. I think is the end of Exo 2?
Yes, Ghost Fragment Exo 2.
Yeah.
But, and I think this kind of, the reason I kind of put that in there is because, you know, Beard and I's recent conversation about Clovis Bray and the exo diseases and stuff like that potentially potentially introducing I don't want to call it a non-insidious reason, but like maybe not such a black and white reason.
An Shyamalama down reason?
Oh, don't get me started. Split or what is it? Glass is coming out. So excited. Anyways, back to Destiny.
How altered carbon of you.
Nice. So yeah, that was kind of the question that I think is still really kind of up in the air is like what exactly was the cause that led to the concept of exoscience even being brought to the table. I mean, it could have been something as simple as, hey, this would be cool. Or, you know, was it something more like, hey, you know, our family is dying because of the hive festering carcasses that we decided to build a big base on top of and steal their technology from.
The thing that we've been led to believe part of this time is that they were created as an army fight.
Because and you do see that with like the evolution of frames.
Yeah.
But they're tools in the beginning. That's how it always starts. I mean,
But were they? That's the question.
Yeah.
That's my question is the frames. The frames. I will unequivocally agree with you. Like the frames were totally tools.
but
Exo that can be taken so many different ways. I realized as soon as I said that.
Frame not the predecessor. Is the frame not the predecessor of the Exo? I mean, like first
well, but
you make
that is the question, though. I think that is the question.
Were they?
and then you imbue that tool with a little bit more autonomy a little bit more power,
sense
and then
of self and stuff.
Each iteration becomes a little bit less reliant on input from its creator until eventually you're left with a
Skynet,
a self-aware. It doesn't have to be Skynet, Blue. A self-aware.
What does it?
sentient consciousness that
Which
does it much like the tree in the forest. I mean, it will make a sound whether or not you're there to, like it's
right.
It
I guess
is
that
aware of
also
itself.
that brings up
and
another
it is-
question too that I kind of am curious on your guys' thoughts. Is every exo a human?
I was going to say, Justin, all of those thoughts supplant the idea that frames are a predecessor to Exo, in that Exos are direct descendants thereof. And if that is the case, that would end up indicating that we tried to shove a human consciousness into a frame. And that would also indicate that some of the frames are also going to end up being human consciousness. In which case, oh my god, Sweeperbot is just carrying out the maid's duty.
No.
I mean,
didn't
Delilah
actually
kind of
mean-
does grow personality.
Yeah, very.
I didn't actually mean that the frames were necessarily the Exo predecessors. What I actually meant was it was a progression in development.
Right.
Right. The technology developed and stuff. Yeah.
Well, the Endeavor developed.
Mhm.
It's the evolution of the Endeavor, not necessarily the evolution of the end product, which what you get is Banshee 44 cleaning the same Suros pulse rifle indefinitely for years on end, never questioning it.
Which is what I figured you were going with, just to kind of throw that in there real quick. But I wanted to at least clear the air in case anybody was thinking that.
Yeah.
I do have a couple questions to kind of tie back into this a little bit. One correction real quick. It's Exo 1, by the way. Ghost Fragment Exo 1. It was
I was
not
going to
Ghost
say
Fragment
Exo 2 was, isn't that the one with the Thanatonaut?
Yeah, that's the Thanatonaut shooting himself in the head.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Banshee face laser.
I always get them screwed up, though. They're so easy to screw around.
Yeah, I have my whiteboard, but it's behind me, so I have to turn my head to look while I'm talking. That has all these notes.
All I can see is Green with her pinky in her mouth, like.
Yes. Anyway,
$1 million.
$1 million. The Exos, going back to the frames, there's a line that is related back to the Exo Stranger about "You are not one of mine."
Mm-hmm.
The
Platforms.
prevailing theory is that the frames are Rasputins because Rasputin is still controlling them. Are the Exos also included in that bunch? Or are the Exos beyond that?
I would say that some of them are at least included into it, but that comes back to an earlier question. Are all Exo built of human intelligence, or are some of them built of computing-based intelligence only?
AI.
And at that point, the question needs to be, of course, how far that we come. But with what we know today, with this stuff of the of Clovis Bray possibly utilizing the Hive's technology in different manners than they probably should have been, the question kind of comes down: how much of that was technology that was either backwards engineered or otherwise utilized, or was it simply used for the sake of well, we know that it's here and it works, we'll figure it out later. Which I don't know any corporation that would try to do that at all. No. But that being said, I've always felt, especially after recent information, that it is more of a mix now that we have, where Exos and can actually be created as well as they are in existence in a being that was researched to go from human into a robotic or AI format.
Justin?
No, I was just going to say that completely makes sense, because the hunt for sentience and the self-awareness begins and ends with the human brain, the human cerebral system. So it makes complete sense that the first gen, or the first generation of the Exos, would be born of human cerebellum. But as in all things technological, you advance, and it just makes sense that they would stand on the shoulders of that accomplishment and eventually develop a purely synthetically born artificial intelligence. So to that logic, I kind of think that the first gen Exos were born of a human consciousness, and then after that they started to produce their own.
Well, and to tie it back to something that Deej had said on stream back in the day about how or what like Clovis Spray is related to, one of those relations is the Tyrell Corporation.
Mhm.
Tyrell dealt almost specifically in the idea of robotics and whatnot, but making these robots look and act human. So like the Gen 5 systems that you see in Blade Runner do not necessarily realize that they are what they
robots.
are. Or they have the ability to kind of like hide it very easily. And then you also see this with like Rachel, because Rachel has no idea that she is in fact not a replicant. Now I can't think of the exact terminology for it. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, it's not replicant. Gosh, now you got me thinking.
I'm gonna say I always get it messed up with like 2 or 3 others because I watch too much other sci-fi. But long story short, of like the type that they had created with the Tyrell Corporation, they started to create sentient life that kind of fit into that bill. So I would at least kind of again throw that out there that was something that Tyrell was ultimately looking to do, and they succeeded in doing so. Green, I know you had something. I didn't mean to cut you off, but I really wanted to throw that in there.
You're perfectly fine. I'm actually going to push back and argue against you guys on this one.
What?
Wait a
minute, that's Blue and I's job. Stop it.
Hey, no, I'm in first. But the concept that you were talking about, how exos could theoretically be not human consciousness, I actually disagree with that very much so. I think frames were, like we were talking about how frames were the initial development, and frames were the frame, the structure that they used to develop what an exo body would look like. An exo, and the definition of exo, like the prefix, is external.
Outside, yeah.
Outside, it's external. So it's when I think you become an exo when a human consciousness is moved outside of the body into this other shell, essentially.
I can agree with that, yeah.
And
sorry, go for it. I was going to say the other thing is like it's outside the frame. Like the origin is outside frame. It can go both ways.
Right. So I think the way I feel about how exos are and how we see in the exoscience rooms during that Lost Sector / adventure, I think you kind of get into, the different rooms have frames in them. Granted, they are redjacks, which is also a whole other, like a can of worms is like, what the heck are they doing there? But there are frames in there, in those rooms specifically, that we don't actually see any rooms with quote-unquote exos in there, or exo bodies.
And in the same, if you're going to have a type of like military or security force, you're not always going to put your best on the front lines in that regard.
Or on a tour.
That would be, that would be the only reason that I think that like frames and exos could coexist in that line if I were to continue on with the line of thinking. But it's I don't disagree in that, right? I don't think that they were, I guess what's the way that I more so mean it as, we needed to create an exo first in order to understand how exo work. That was at least the first concept and idea. And then from there, you ended up having the ability to then understand more of like how this brain or understand how the science and the tech would work out. And then after you end up having the capabilities to do that, you're able to kind of back configure and so on and create something that can then be made of it. Additionally, if it is to the point that exos are purely computer based, I just wonder how many of them can actually be stowed inside of a computer, and then how many of them can again be altered. Because that's the biggest idea with the Tyrell Corporation, to tie back to that once again, because I still think it fits the analogy perfectly. Tyrell understood this weakness of the way that their robots or sentient life would end up being perceived even by themselves, and they knew that they needed to build off of these ideas, so they supplanted memories from other people inside of those robots, and that basically was their entire reason for not necessarily questioning everything. It was the simple fact that, oh, well, I have these memories, I must be a human being. And then you come to find out that that's not probably the case. So again, I think that's why we stand. Ever. I think that's why we stand to because anything with computing, you've got manipulation of data or anything else that can kind of exist with data itself. But that is the unknown that we have right now. We're not entirely sure in how exo minds are fabricated or put together, etc., and how they are then stowed after the fact is another big question that needs to still be answered out. Right. And additionally, I would say that we know part of that because of the information of like what we know with DER. With DER and having to actually encompass or program in certain subsects to an exo, that means they are programmable. So in that right, I would still ask the very big question of how much of them is themselves and how much of them is fabricated memory. The only reason that Cade knows about Ace is because he has a journal. If it wasn't for that journal, if it wasn't for Shinobu having that journal, then it wouldn't end up fitting into that bill quite well. And this journal is also something that is predated to him as a guardian. It is also after he turns to being an exo. So it falls back into both predilections. So that's my big.
Real quick,
I guess you could say that's my big hang up.
Real quick, I want to kind of go back real quick, Beard. When you said DER, for those who might not be aware of that terminology, can you expand on that for us real quick?
DER.
Okay.
I was going to say if you have it, go ahead.
Okay, so this is from the concierge files from Core Terminus on Mars. It's the first one on Ishtar Collective. Mm-hmm. And it says, early experiments in exoscience managed to encode the human consciousness into a form that could be processed digitally. At the time, we believed that it was that the big hurdle to overcome in the creation of the exo. Little did we know that the real challenge would be the phenomenon known as dissociative exo-mind rejection. Nascent proto-exos developed serious symptoms of cognitive disorder that eventually led to death. It turned out the human mind would not reconcile its presence in a new body. So yeah, it's the DER is the dissociative exo-mind rejection. Basically, not being able to reconcile that your body is not really your body, or like your mind thinks as a human and it thinks it should be able to experience certain things like drinking and eating and the feeling of touch and stuff like that. Like you are expecting that to happen. The consciousness is expecting that to happen. And if it doesn't, the mind breaks down and does not allow it to happen, which causes the cognitive disorders, which breaks down and they die from it. So that's a fun thing.
Real quick on there, actually, two things. First off, easy way for those who are thinking about this or who might not be following. It's the same concept as if you had a limb transplant or an organ transplant. Your body rejects that transplant. Your brain, it's just a psychological. It's just the psychological version of that. And it actually begs the question that I find really interesting on what is the self and what is memory. This is a very important thing to consider with regards to exoscience. The other thing, too, that I actually kind of bring into the fold for the DER argument is, is it the brain, and this is kind of a more sinister interpretation of what's going on, but, you know,
sinister
talking...
Clovis brain? Never.
Yeah. Well, and Beard, I know this kind of tags into what you're talking about with Blade Runner, because Blade Runner... that wasn't the first time that they explored the concept of a psychological entity that was not human necessarily, but just a self-sentient or self-aware entity rejecting its own self because it was at odds with the reality of which it existed. I mean, we have this in cognitive disorders in humans today without exos. Anytime you hear someone talking about a psychotic break, that's exactly what this is. But I think the more sinister thing that I was reading into it is it the brain reacting to the false body, or is it actually the brain reacting to false memories? Is it the human brain finding these memories and recognizing them as foreign and trying to reintegrate them? Because basic psychology 101, everyone's mind, when you perceive the world around you, you perceive the world as normal. That's just basic psychology 101. Your world, everything that exists in your world makes perfect sense to you. A crazy person doesn't necessarily recognize themselves as crazy. They recognize other people as crazy, right? And this is exactly what's happening in a dissociative state. Is your brain is trying desperately to connect the dots, to connect the points of which you have these disconnected points, hence the word dissociative. And so if you're experiencing something akin to dissociative exo mind rejection, it's like my initial response is that it's actually not rejecting the exo body, it's rejecting the memories that are trying to be implemented into the individual. And it's a very popular trope in science fiction, also in the concept of the debate of free will versus programmable will. You see this a lot of times when you start talking about science fiction in which human individuals are input into machines. And one of the things that just is always there is the human sense of self wants to be free. It wants to have its own control. And so that's where, and again, going back to Blade Runner, that's why Rachel and the more advanced forms of the replicants, though they're not replicants because now that's stuck in my head, but the more advanced androids, no, it's fine. It works. But the more advanced forms of those entities, that's why a lot of them don't realize that they're robots. Actually, Asimov, we talked about Asimov in the Positronic Brain at the start of the show. Asimov explores this concept in a way to get around the three laws. He has androids who are convinced that they are actually human, and therefore they are not bound by the three laws. However, when they realize that they are androids, which is kind of the point of his short stories, is that psychological tension of realizing that everything you know in your world is not actually the way it is, they're suddenly bound by them. And that also usually precedes a catastrophe of epic proportions in the story. But that's where I kind of get the DER sense. I'm actually seeing it as a psychological banging your head against the wall. And go for it. Sorry, I'll ramble on this for hours.
It's an easy topic to talk.
Justin had something first, and then I wanted to jump in with something as well.
Sure.
Okay. I actually think a contributor to dissociative exomind rejection actually might even be on the hardware side of things as well. All of us have a sense that we're really not even all that aware of that helps us to associate ourselves with ourselves, and it is called proprioception. I don't know if you've ever heard about this one. But this is how you know in a dark room where your foot is. Like, how do you know where your foot is? Like, you're not touching it with your hands, you're not seeing it with your eyes, you're not, hopefully not tasting it with your mouth. You don't know where your foot is, right? but you have tiny receptors in your nervous system called proprioceptors. They constantly give your brain data on the angle of joints, the tension of muscles, the kind of
awareness.
Yes, it is very much a spatial awareness tool for your body. And if you can imagine being awakened in a very limited exo in a very limited exo body that is not capable of of giving you all this positive feedback as to your being, you can imagine how this would lead to a very disembodied
sense.
It's not a very
you see it a lot.
It's not a very good way to wake up.
Right. Well, we talked about that actually with the prosthetics, right? And how they were kind of getting around that problem with cybernetics. That's exactly the problem with cybernetics, is that sense of where's my leg, and that's where you get the concept of like ghost pains and the ghost limb, the ghost limb symptom or phantom limb. That's exactly what's happening there. And that's where that the TED talk that we discussed. What episode was that? That was pretty recently.
It was on the Concierge Files.
Oh, was it the Concierge Files?
And
okay.
I honestly think that is a pretty strong contributing factor to needing, when they talk about the fact that they needed to put human emotions into I think that was actually needed to make the consciousness be invested in its own existence.
I can see that argument.
That sense of self-interest is what it needed, because the early exos, you can imagine, didn't have the level of sophistication and haptic feedback and things like that the new ones probably do. Mm-hmm. And you can imagine that early exo minds probably needed to be coddled a lot more than the ones now.
I could totally see that in development cycles of technology in general too. You see that, as Beard, I think, mentioned it too earlier, is, we build an exo, or in this world, we build an exo and then, that went wrong. We need to do that differently next time. It's trial by error, which when you're dealing with human consciousness is a little bit of a touchy subject, because error translates into, hey, that's involuntary manslaughter.
Unless it isn't,
unless it's a volunteer, right, who owes you a lot of money.
An indentured servant.
Yeah, I'm going to say I'm thinking of SCP situations here now for anybody that knows the SCP Foundation, but
I'm curious something as far as related back to DER. Something I don't know if we've even heard since D1. Has there been any mention about the Deepstone Crypt? Because that used to be the big topic.
Winter's Guile. Winter's Guile confirms
it's always like the most forgotten card ever, I feel like. It's such
amazing.
It's so good.
So there's two things that stand out to me for Winter's Guile, really, that are like direct confirmations. One of them is exos are fully consciously aware of the Deepstone Crypt. Now, where we kind of get into the gray area is the Ghost Fragment, or what is it? The Legends Mysteries card, the Deepstone Crypt card. And even in that card, though, the exo who is speaking kind of mentions that, exos know about it. We just don't talk about it unless you get us quote unquote drunk. The other thing that Winter's Guile like unequivocally confirms, and anyone who has connected, the other miscellaneous cards together, this is an assumption that everyone kind of already had, but it's a direct confirmation that Exos and the Deepstone Crypt and that entire scenario existed before Ghost. Which, again, if you have plotted a basic timeline of the Grimoire, you're it's not, that shouldn't come as a huge surprise, but the ghost flat out calls it. Like the Fellwinter's ghost pretty much just says, "Oh, that was before my time."
Can we talk about that card just a bit? Because
yeah, I'd love to talk about that
in
card.
a lot of ways.
Yeah, Winter's Guile is like one of my favorite cards to talk about. Not only does it include like my favorite of course the Iron Lords themselves, but like Winter's Guile is just fantastic. Such a good card. You know what? Let me get to a safe spot here in like 5 seconds, and I will read it for you because I really like this card.
There's two characters in this card. There is an Exo and a Ghost.
Yeah, it's not just any Exo.
Oh, I know.
Is Beard in like a bad part of town?
That's the clicks that you hear in the background. Is him pulling onto a side street.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay,
that's exactly what it is.
At least it isn't fireworks.
That is if Nessus had a side street. All right. So again, hey, you want to do that thing you never do?
Oh yeah, we have that. What does the text say?
So this again is Winter's Guile. It is one of the newer exotics from Destiny Year 1. It is from Vanilla, and it is one of the most OP Warlock gloves ever. Moving on. The piece about this, though, as you're going to hear, keep in mind the two characters that are within it again, and keep notion of what said characters say back and forth between each other.
We could make that easy and just have two different people read it.
I mean, if you want to go that way, that's fine. Who's going to be my ghost?
I haven't been in a good old fashioned FFC audio grimoire in a long time.
Justin could be your ghost.
Oh,
yeah.
You could be my wingman anytime.
All right.
Yeah, let me get it up. Oh, crazy.
Click, click, clickety, click, 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 click.
Click, 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 click.
He put a link in your chat for you.
There you go.
I'm not using it because I'm difficult.
Of course you are.
So
You would start.
I would start. Okay.
You are starting.
This is Winter's Guile. Listen to me very carefully. They're coming for you. They'll ask you for a name. Your name is Fellwinter.
I don't think that's my name.
I know. Say it anyway.
Why can't I remember my name? I always remember my name. Something's wrong. Was I damaged in crypt processing?
I don't know anything about the Deepstone Crypt before my time.
What the hell are you?
You don't trust me?
No.
You will.
You're a very presumptuous little drone. What makes you think that?
No one else will help you. It's kill or die out there.
You will.
You will.
I love the. I have a whole new level of respect for Fellwinter's ghost now.
I know. Like I try to figure out like who is
it's
more.
It's a kill or die world out there.
Mm-hmm. It's like who's more inquisitive by the end of it? Is it Fellwinter or is it Ghost?
I don't know. Little did you know Fellwinter's ghost was actually Headley Lamar from Blazing Saddles.
That's what I was trying to place. I was trying to place where the voice was coming from.
That is awesome.
Lordy Lou. Well, before I start singing the song and we get a copyright claim.
Okay, so there's a couple things that stand out in the card. Fellwinter doesn't know his name, is the first one.
He recognizes that he doesn't know his name.
He recognizes that he doesn't know his name. Plus, was I damaged in crypt processing? Crypt processing by itself, then Ghost fills in the blanks.
Yep.
Deepstone Crypt, which is like, wait a second. If you don't know why did you say the whole thing? Like that is very weird.
Now, add to this that in, I believe it is Exo I think it's just in the Exo card explaining it. Exo are a mystery even to themselves, and only ghosts seem to have the knowledge to repair them. And this is a very key point to kind of keep in mind when you start talking about Exos, I think, as a whole, especially when you start comparing them back to ghosts or something. Green, help me before I keep going down this tangent, because you know exactly where this is going.
Right. So the whole Justin, you help them. You got the.
No, I was just gonna say, there was talk of why does he not know his name, but know that he does not know his name, and then also doesn't have any problem with what crypt processing is and all this. Actually, the way memories work is it's not black and white. It's not like you remember something or you don't remember something. Your memory centers of your brain are actually quite complex, and you store different engrams of a memory in different centers of your brain. So you'll actually have the same memory redundantly filed multiple places inside your brain. A good example of this is actually from my real life. When I was about 10 years old, I had a really high fever, and I ended up with something a lot of people don't even, ever think is really a thing, but I actually had amnesia. Like, I had a super high fever. They got really scared. They took me to the hospital, and I was in the hospital for like a week or something. I can't remember, but essentially, I'm laying in this bed, and the doctor's asking me who all these people are. And for some reason, I remember my grandmother, and they're asking me who she is. And I know that she's my grandmother. I just cannot tell you her name. So the memory is somehow fouled up, and it's not so much the memory as it is my retrieval of it.
Well, it's also the location of where those certain memories are, because
exactly.
a singular memory like that has many locations within the brain, like you're talking about. Yeah. You can remember the site of her, but assigning the name may be in a different part of the brain.
Well, and also I could assign her title, but I could not assign her name, which I knew. So
just to add a quick name to this as well, think about Banshee as a whole and how he recovers certain memories but doesn't recover others. To throw that out there.
So I threw that story in there so that the next time I forget to do something for Blue, he will be a little bit understanding.
No, he won't be. What?
I don't think he will either.
No, he's a slave driver. We all know it. It's fine.
Look, the program doesn't allow me to have empathy, okay?
Oh God.
Best thing.
It's just the way I'm programmed.
Right.
I'll
remember that when I drink too much beer next time.
Tell Anna to fix it.
But okay, so Fellwinter, he always remembers his name. So Deepstone Crypt is a good enough program that he always remembers his name.
Well, and I think that goes back to also the concept of what got damaged in the collapse. Right. And what the interaction with light and, the Exo mind, which we saw in Cade's journal. Cade makes the comment that, light gets in there and kind of jacks things up. And if screws everything up. That's where I was kind of drawing a connection at the start of the show too, with the idea that, if we understand the Exo mind to be based around the concept of an engram, because of the data storage capacity, and the engram was kind of a deviation of our understanding of light, from what word am I looking for? The information that Willa Bray, found through the relic crystals and everything like that. That would explain why when a Exo is resurrected, as we see here with Fellwinter, why memories kind of get jumbled. And, I think that goes a long way to explaining that little bit of a mystery. And at least in my theory, I think that goes a bit to explaining that.
This also explains why Winter doesn't have a number.
Well, that part
neither
that
does
Ashraven, and that's
yeah. I was going to say
Takeo
neither
3.
does Ashraven. Now, Tishlan, I forget what the name is now. It's not Takeo.
Oh, it's not Takeo. It's not. I always forget her.
Ariana?
Yeah,
no.
It's
Ashraven's actual name.
Yeah, it's on Ego, the Ego Raptor
Trespass
thing.
Arrows.
It's the ship Ego Raptor, I think. Yeah.
So, but with this one, it would explain it, because if all the other Guardians are able to, once they're resurrected, to remember their name, because maybe this isn't the case with every one of them, or the ghost, okay, maybe they're able to remember the name Cade 6 or Takeo 3, Ariana 3, but the ghost is assigning the name to the new Guardian as Winter.
Right, and I think that may, I don't know. I kind of took that as this might just be this ghost.
Tanasha 3, by the way.
Tanasha, that's what. I wasn't too far
I
off.
will never remember that name ever. I have no idea why.
Hey, I got the number right, which is there's a lot of Exos with 3. Actually, now that I'm thinking about that.
Yes,
but I kind of took it as a unique quantity of this particular ghost. I never got the sense necessarily that, because like Anna Bray got her name from her medical ID card, which I love the fact that they actually kind of subtly explained that. Cade has his journal. Shinobu had a journal.
Shinobu wasn't an exo, but it's just for like memory.
Oh yeah, sorry,
recollection in that respect, just to highlight why that's important.
But yeah, so like I mean, and so there's that.
Shiro, Saint 14.
Well, and Saint 14, I don't know. Like Saint 14, I still am like, is that actually his name? Because seriously, someone was really unimaginative as a parent.
I'm gonna say he's up to his 14th iteration technically, and granted, he comes from the future anyway, so it's fine.
See Beard's video about anyway.
He's perfect, right? he's a future perfect man.
He's kind of like paradoxical or something in a perfect manner.
You say my dad jokes are bad.
No, shut up.
Hashtag green jokes.
It's going to be a thing.
Hang on, Joker. And you say my jokes are bad.
Oh, my. Let's not throw Joker into this.
All right, that's fine, I guess.
So, we've talked about DER. We've talked about Deepstone Crypt. We've sort of talked about the progression of the technology as far as frames to exos, which is still mostly a theory, right? We don't have any we don't have any written text. We have inferences based
we know
off
that
things.
They might have had like similar structural integrity behind them, if you will, as like a predecessor for the outside exoskeleton. But I think that's about where like
the connection between the frames and the exos.
Yes.
I mean, I mean, to be clear, I wouldn't be surprised. But I just think that it is something that needs to be, clearly stated that's not a confirmed connection. Though, I mean, again, kind of going back to what Justin was saying, and we were saying earlier, the development of technology, it would kind of make sense that, oh, hey, look, we have frames and we need something mechanical to put a human body in. Hey, let's, jury rig this into working.
No,
I mean, it makes perfect sense to me.
You couldn't. There's no amount of arguing you could do to convince me that the development of frame technology had absolutely no impact on the development of exotechnology.
Exotechnology, right?
Yeah. That would be like saying that the iPod had zero influence on the development of the iPhone. Like it would make no sense. I mean, both are garbage, but
I like that dig. I like it
don't
quite a
tell
bit.
Noseworthy that.
Yes.
I mean,
okay.
not to sow an apple of discord, but
God.
Here's a question for you. Do we have an example in lore of the first real uses of an exo body via proxy through the Vex network and the Ishtar group?
yeah, Ghost Fragment XO4
Is that
or
the
Vex
first
4,
iteration
not
of it,
XO,
or like
not X.
a?
Yeah, but see,
first
I would argue though that's not. I mean, they're proxying into frames, which again, I don't think that means that that's an exo.
No.
I think you need to draw the distinction there between an advanced frame maybe and a proxy frame, which again goes back to the conversation we had earlier about the upgrade of the Warsat network and the need for, real-time data transference, because that's where I see it being led. But that all being said, I kind of am going to double down with Justin on you can see that being a connection in the progression of an exoscience development. Though it should also be noted that that's not Clovis Bray that's doing that proxying.
It's Ishtar Collective.
It's Ishtar.
Which wasn't
right, which
Oh,
was kind of
it's
a
also
competitive.
Yeah,
It
it doesn't
did
really
have-
matter who's doing the proxying, though.
Well,
It
no.
did
I mean,
have
like the
access to
technology
Rasputin,
wise.
though. They did have access to Rasputin because Rasputin was the Warmind that
That's true.
helped them do that.
Yep.
So it's not like they're completely separated from each other. They
Yeah.
may be slightly competitive, but they are.
Mihailova taught it
intertwined.
well.
We get some confirmation on like how far they each like to go, because it does seem like Ishtar and Clovis are working together, but insofar as they do not share secrets, which basically would come down to Ishtar doesn't send out Vex technology and Clovis doesn't send out Hive technology. That's about how that seems to read to me.
Yeah,
anymore.
I can totally agree with that. Yeah.
But Elsie was able to get technology from Ishtar, or get the technology to Ishtar, because Elsie Bray was the one who.
But Elsie was
doing-
also the one that was trying to get away because she was trying to
Right.
escape. So I think that there might be some, degree of possible corporate espionage going on there as well.
There was reason for her to escape because she found a means that was necessary to actually have Hive and Vex technology.
Right. That's what. But I mean, that's what I
integrate,
mean.
and
Is
that
like,
was-
I think
that's her reason for running.
I think that also goes to the fact of her running, because it, exactly what you guys are saying. The corporation, those two corporations, if you want to call them corporations. I mean, I know Clovis Bray is. You might be able to argue that Ishtar isn't, though I debate that. But those two definitely are aligned with Vex and Hive. They're like Beard was saying, and I can see Elsie kind of being that's the reason why Willa is so hell bent on finding Elsie. In the card that she's trying to sneak around and trying to get out of what is it, Futurescape, or I think it was Futurescape that she was trying to escape.
Right.
I think that might be a possible reason exactly why Elsie was being hunted the way she was being hunted, is because she had figured out exactly what you guys were just saying is a way to marry up those two foreign technologies. And obviously Clovis Bray's not going to let that one slip away.
Mm-mm.
Speaking of like the technologies, we know of certain experiments within Clovis Bray as far as like the Siva tech. Do you think that we went from Engram to Siva tech to Exo? Or I'm trying to I know
Like a timeline of development.
Right.
Yeah.
I kind of consider Siva to be a separate entity. Like nanotechnology. Nanotechnology, I mean, to kind of argue, nanotechnology is currently something that's going on. Like,
right.
We can arguably, I mean, what was it? I was just reading Walmart. Walmart just bought a patent on robotic bees. Like, I mean, it's nanotechnology is something that is completely plausible and completely doable today. Now, whether or not you can get like nanobots, you know, that's a different debate. But I don't think Ingram, I don't think Ingram development necessarily would assist in reduction of physical size of the bots in a way as much as it would with the Exo, like the creation of a pseudo positronic brain.
I'm going to say, I think just
I think
far
that there's
as storage,
right?
Just so far as like storage, that would be the only thing. Like I would say that like in that respect, engrams had to exist for the Exo to exist because of how much information is able to be stored inside of a human brain.
Right.
Now, all the same, we are effectively not able to utilize every piece of that information that's given to us, as we also had said at the top of the show there. But it is something that at least needs to be considered for like how much of our hard drive kind of would be in existence there, and that's exactly what engrams would kind of stand to fix, at least in some regards. Again, we're not sure about like Bekenstein limits or anything like that if they got broken or anything, but it is just a matter of data storage. That being said, I don't think that SIVA has anything to do on the Exo end, simply because SIVA was not a storage type device. It was a programmable piece of matter, and it's certainly linked to
SIVA executed, Exo stored.
Can you give, like, I'm gonna Justin, let me get this real quick. This is all theoretical, by the way. We really have no way to know this, but bear with me. SIVA, the way the SIVA mites or the owl sector mites really work is they reprogram and they diverge and build things, right? That is their whole purpose, is to build and create.
I would clarify, they don't reprogram.
Mm-mm.
They execute a program.
They don't self.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, just to clarify, you can reprogram them, but they can't reprogram themselves. Yeah, they are not capable of self-program. They are beholden to a master.
That being said, within the Exo, engrams themselves, based off of what we know about them, they can store an immense amount of data. The more difficult the piece of information that they're storing, the more rare the engram is, the more complex the engram is. An Exo would be the like uber rare, absolute rare. Human minds
just had a thought cross.
Yeah. Human minds are immensely complex in the fact that we can assimilate new information and add new information into it based off of other things and create new bridges and new memories and stuff like that. Would it be theoretically possible for the SIVA-like technology to bridge over into the engrams to create the positronic brain that can actually develop and store more things more like a human, rather than just execute and assimilate based off of a very limited amount of space?
You're getting into some very dangerous territory
I
of
know.
Like how you would end up like having SIVA create memory, and how a human being would no longer
SIVA
be that
se,
human. But that's exactly like that's exactly SIVA's directive, is to uphold in that regard.
But she's onto something there too, because
there's a
we
big
know that
thing
the Exos
that kills this, unfortunately. But I'll let you continue.
Well, I was just going to say, we know that Exos repairs are foreign.
Yeah.
And so if you have a nanotechnology that is built into as a self-repairing component, that would explain somewhat how Exos are. It also explain how ghosts are able to easily help with repairs of Exos, even though they might not understand it. If there's a nanotechnology, I'm not saying SIVA, but I'm saying if there's a nanotechnology component within the Exo that allows for self-repair, that would make I could see that making that. I mean, like, I completely am on board with that. As far as like the SIVA construction,
right. I think it's
getting into
aspect.
Right. I think that's getting into like the idea of building robots to build robots. Which, I mean, again, not a foreign concept. It actually makes perfect sense. I mean, go look at any factory line and you'll see a robot building a robot. Like, that's kind of what happens. I don't. Beard, what were you going to say?
The biggest thing that would kind of kill the idea, which at least in my personal thinking would come down to time. When we start to see a lot of the stuff about SIVA, especially with like sending it off world and everything, Rasputin even knows that it is something that's more experimental. Meanwhile, the Exos are not experimental. Now, you could easily have something where the next line of Exo was going to be something that incorporated SIVA, and perhaps Rasputin has that thought in mind, but I would just have a really hard time thinking that they would both be together, only to have SIVA be something that is a little on the...
Well, but hang on real quick. On that thought process, though, SIVA was experimental, but nanotechnology wasn't.
Rasputin has nanotechnology to create the weapons that we get at his forge. Like
right. But what I mean there is, what I'm saying is that the idea of having a nanotechnology component to repair the Exos is not unreasonable. Whereas, I mean, yes, having SIVA do it, I think would be the time time constraint would be a problem. But having nanotechnology do it.
Of the ones that we know are capable of recreating matter in that respect, because
but I mean, you wouldn't be recreating. You would be. I mean, I guess it depends on what your definition of repairs are there, right?
So let's think about like an arm gets blown off. I'm not going to have something that gets repaired by a nanomachine unless they have some means to recreate or replicate. And in that respect, the only one that really seems to fit that bill ultimately was SIVA. So in that regard,
but the other thing
is,
I would fight. I guess my argument here is, I mean, yes, I understand what you're saying and I agree, but I think that also begs the question of what makes SIVA, right? Why is SIVA the only one that's capable of doing
autonomy?
Well, but SIVA doesn't really have autonomy. I think the degree that I was arguing is I think it's the reprogrammability of SIVA, whereas a basic nanotech, you could have. I mean, and again, going back, this is all supposition here, but that being said, I think I could see a difference between a base nanotech that's like, hey, you're going to be housed in this unit, and you're responsible for repairing this unit. Like, I don't see a problem with that, and I wouldn't classify that as SIVA. I would classify that as, exoscience nanos.
Purely just me going on, okay, what's the timeline of their inventions? Because we know a couple different inventions that Clovis Bray has had. The idea that the nanotechnology, I use SIVA because it's the most relevant, easy thing that we can remember because it's the thing we had in Rise and Iron. Not everybody remembers what happened with the transmission crisis. Like, not everyone remembers the nanobytes that we had floating around our own heads.
Which is a shame that we don't know that.
I know there was a call for it again today, but
yeah.
The idea is the technology and the lessons they learned in creating those different nanites for the brilliance, magnificence. I don't remember the other two's names. And what ended up being fortitude. They all had different effects and they all had different things, and they were eventually able to quote unquote reprogram them or destroy them within the bodies and sort of fix the people-ish, maybe, but maybe.
Did they?
Right. That's my favorite catchphrase right there. Did they though?
Yeah,
but
really.
It's the lessons learned in that project that could help develop the ability for Exos to be able to function more like a human rather than a frame robot that does not have the ability to expand unless you're programming AI into every single one of them.
Right.
Well,
right. And I think that also goes into the idea of that could be what's the equivalent of the exofluid. It could be
milk.
So
it wouldn't be Vex milk, but it would be Exo milk.
So what goes? There's so much to unpack there. So what goes what goes into to a human's adaptability and to the human experience from a neurological level
versus a computer.
Yeah, versus a computer model. Like, what is the defining trait that we can't seem to recreate with
from the synaptic connections?
Yes, exactly. It's a density.
Yeah.
It's a
Density.
Well, I was just going to say.
Oh, okay, you were going to answer it. I thought you were asking the question.
Oh yeah, well I was, and then I felt like I could best answer it. But no, I was just going to say it's not so much any physical limitation. It's a density and kind of the architecture of the synaptic connections. So
right.
I don't feel like SIVA is an advancement that has all that much bearing on the self-awareness of the Exo. Now, certain things like we're talking about, like self-repairing and other things like that, I can totally see it. But in terms of making the Exo minds more human, more self-aware, more sentient, more autonomous, and self-adapting, I don't feel like SIVA's even a factor there. I feel like to go back to kind of a point that Brett Grizzly was making is that I think the engram and the enigmatic technology that came out of the Golden Age had a much greater bearing on the development of the Exo than something like nanotech. Nanotech, for me, unless I'm completely missing the boat, and this is not, my field of expertise or anything, but unless I'm a much more physical measure that is projected on a much smaller scale, which I guess on a small enough scale, everything is physical, but I just don't feel like nanotech has that big a bearing on, Cade being Cade or Lakshmi being Lakshmi. I feel like it's much more a function of the architecture of the the AI, how it's structured. And I really feel like the engram and engram technology had a lot more to do with that than
yeah, I would agree
SIVA.
with that. It's just the Clovis Bray is really good at using all their discoveries and all their other things, and this is one of those inventions that you're like, okay, you see engram technology in there, but is there anything else that we know that Clovis Bray has done that would also theoretically, this is all Spinfoil, theoretically influence the Exo and the development of it. So that's mainly what I was getting at. We got there eventually.
I think it's a really good question too. I mean, admittedly, with this much Spinfoil, it's all open to debate.
But yeah, I don't have anything else unless we want to talk more about specific Exos, such as Exo Stranger / Elsie Bray and her Exoness.
Yeah, you want to talk about a Spinfoil topic, though.
Oh,
Spinfoil topic that is Spinfoil no more, you mean?
Yeah.
There's still too much. I mean, let's be honest here. This is still the way that Bungie does things. They reveal one thing, and all of a sudden, yeah, we just told you a name, but what does a name give you?
Right. And honestly,
more questions.
We could do a whole episode of Elsie Bray Spinfoil.
We really could. Like who it is that she's talking to, how she travels through time, etc.
How she steps.
Like how
is
she
she
steps,
going
what
through
she
time?
does. Yep, I'm gonna say like so many different
When-
things that kind of like pan back and forth between. Again, you have a name, you have more of a supposition of who it is that is doing or taking part in these events. But now, how is it that she still does these things? It still
Right.
doesn't answer those questions.
Here's a question for you that we could theoretically throw out some spinfoil and answer-ish.
Didn't we already have enough of that? No, I'm kidding. We can never have
When-
enough spinfoil.
Yes. Beard has converted me completely. When has Elsie Bray turned into an exo? Is it before she leaves Clovis Bray facility?
It has to
in
be
Futurescape?
before. It has to be
Or
before.
is it? It doesn't though, because we know that's the research facility. But is
Well-
that where everything's made,
Uh,
or does she
mean-
leave and then?
come back? I mean,
Well, is there another facility that can make exos?
I guess technically theoretically
I mean,
there's Europa. Theoretically. I mean, that's a
guess so
heavy
you-
theory, though.
Yeah, one that's backed up with like Cage Journal and everything, of course, but that's one of the only major ones.
Mm-hmm.
But again, I would say that it would have to be before she left, based on a couple pieces. And I know it's an interpretation and like how you read it.
Mm-hmm.
One of the major things, though, for me is how we read some of the information based on or around the reason it seems like the exo come to existence.
Mhm.
Comes back to some of the stuff that Blue and I were talking about
Yeah,
on
that's
a
where I
post
kinda pull
show
it from.
not long. Yeah, it's this idea, and again, it could be that headcanon is very strong in this particular case, but the idea and thought that the hive are a xeno species. They carry with them a very different type of biology, as well as different viruses, etc., that they have gotten used to that humans have not. And then suddenly, like, we crack open this can of worms, and then all of a sudden we've got a bunch of we have a need for exos because there's a strain or a virus that now exists that we were not able to predict or understand earlier.
I do have a bone to pick with that.
Okay.
You only
Do
have
we
one?
Okay. I mean, this is.
I mean, I'm
leading
not being
into-
snarky. That's actually a surprise. Like,
Well, okay, yeah, I'm the contrary one in this episode for some reason, but
Yeah, I'm gonna say who is it that I'm supposed to be arguing with? I thought it was Blue.
I mean, at least I do it with a smile, and I'm mostly nice about it.
I love that that's the distinction that I get. That's the
Yeah.
Can we get that?
You're going poor Blue.
Can we get that on a T-shirt?
I know, yeah.
Can we get that on a
Don't
Can we
don't argue with
can we get
Blue.
it?
He's an a-hole.
No, that's not what I said. I
At
said
least I do it with a smile, and I'm mostly nice about it. That's
So
Uh,
many ways I could take that. Moving
Yep.
on.
Yep, after dark later.
Yeah.
So the concept that the hive being underneath Clovis Bray had some sort of xenovirus that infected ish, maybe theoretically.
Well, the
Like,
reason so to clarify real quick, the reason why we were saying it's not that they had a xenovirus, it's because we know that was the burial ground. So it wasn't the hive insofar. It was the fact that you're basically messing with the equivalent of a sacred burial ground of.
Right.
I really don't want to continue down that comparison because I'm going to get in trouble.
So
But yeah, so it wasn't so much that like they got a flu from the hive. It was so much. It was the fact that there is a untold number of carcasses that they're building a facility on top of, and then this kind of deviates into standard science fiction tropes too.
So
They find a frozen sample. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Tahiti is a magical place.
Again, this is all incredible amount of supposition just because we don't have any examples of the workers mentioning anything about this. It may have been just like super, super top secret then, because the workers are more afraid of Willowbray and have I'm thinking the 18 degree Kelvin gun, right? They're afraid of Willowbray But no one's mentioned anything in any of the cards that were workers about the hive.
Except for the fact that we know that Elsie understands stuff about the Vex and so on. The Vex themselves are also
And Rasputin's building weapons for threats that we don't know about.
Right.
I mean, if Rasputin is researching an alien life form and it's, like you said, it's not being spread around, then that would explain right there that he's building weapons to combat the hive, but the average worker might not even know that the hive exists.
Additionally, you have it where we see a virulent lack, if you will, of people that are like there for the ideas of like hive and so on, as kind of Blue was just getting done talking about, just for the simple fact that like most of the cards that we have to reference, what are they in reference to? They're in reference to combat snow gear. Mm-hmm. So you've got a few of these guys that are actually like on point, that are on this facility, that are building this stuff, but in all actuality and eventuality, they are building stuff that they think is going to be there for any other purpose or eventuality that may drop down on humanity's head. They're following in the examples of what Rasputin is basically telling them or working with them on. Additionally, one of the biggest things that I kind of have on this angle that continues to make me think that it's the case is the fact that Elsie is able to work with this technology, and she is able to play around with most of the stuff that is built into it. Again, we know that the Vex kind of exist, but we also know that the Vex are not something that was made public knowledge. Additionally, the Hive could basically be in the same exact position. In that regard, if you end up releasing the idea or availability to the public to simply suggest that there is an alien species at that point that probably doesn't look so good, that is probably going to shoot us and kill us, they're going to be a lot less willing to go even outside the stars or otherwise. We wouldn't have these questions of, we're in peacetime, why do I need to bother making stuff for peacetime? And that's how you get weapons like the Kvastov that are more of an example of art than they are about actually getting the weapon together and utilizing it properly. So again, that's why I kind of hold graftly to this theory, only because of the simple fact that I think they are Clovis is again hiding something away from the overall public when you start to dabbling into when you start dabbling into the build-up to like how the Hive are there, what it is that they're researching or otherwise. But yeah, that's why I kind of hold to this theory as heavy as I do.
That, and they keep getting compared to Wayloran, and I mean,
well, I gotta say, when you put things like Weyland-Yutani and friggin' Tyrell Corporation behind it, yes, of course I'm gonna start thinking about xenoscience per that point.
Right, and that's where xenoscience. I mean, that was where a strong part of this kind of topic even started, was the xenoscience, the use in the Alien series. I mean, the entire problem in Alien series was because humanity got curious and started poking into things that didn't need to poke into, which again, science fiction trope to the nth degree. But that's where a lot, and that was and that could have been a throwaway comment, of course, but that's where to explain where the Spinfoil kind of got, I guess, seeded to grow into the monster that it is. Was kind of where it got, and at least for me, that's where it kind of got started. Was you said that, and it was like, oh, okay, we can go down this path. Like this path is, this path is really interesting. And then, of course, you have the emphasis of necromancy, which, we've debated, right? But I mean, we've debated what that means inside the Hive, and the only thing that kind of, keeps coming back to is, well, you need a grave. Like, these are dead Hive that have been abnormally ripped back into life. That's the definition of necromancy. And so then, well, why is that important? And then, you have Clovis Bray, the question of the whole question of Zol and Nokris being there It's like, how did they not know? Oh, wait, what if they did know and that's why they were there? You know, it's just the whole chicken and egg conversation again as well.
Definitely.
Just to kind of put a little bit of logic into the illogical Spinfoil that I know that it is.
It is utter Spinfoil, but it is a logical one that it's just one of those that I still have a hard time with because I haven't seen hints of it besides the fact of the location of where Clovis Bray's Futurescape is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's also admittedly from the two brains that probably overthink everything. So I'm completely okay with this being.
Yeah.
I mean, look, we overthink things with fact, okay?
Okay. I do want to bring up one question I've seen pretty frequently this week, or at least one statement or idea I've seen a lot this week because of everything we know about Cade 6.
Right.
The idea that we see Cade 6, spoiler, by the way, spoiler for like the next, I don't know how long.
At this point, is it really a spoiler?
Is it really a
point?
spoiler?
I mean,
I don't think that's a
It's not
spoiler.
out yet, so I'm going to spoil it.
Well,
It's
but I
still-
mean, it's
trailer.
If you're living under a rock,
yeah.
it is so hard
Yeah.
to miss this.
If you
Spoiler
didn't
alert.
see
It's just-
Twitter cry for
spoiler
4
alert.
days straight.
If you have an RSS feed that you get this from, you probably are aware of this already. But
Yeah.
So, Cade 6 dies. The fact we see him get shot in the promotional trailer that was released, there's been a lot of theory thrown around.
Oh my
hopeful
gosh,
theory, which
no.
granted, we have confirmation from Bungie that he is dead or will be dead.
Okay,
But
I'm gonna let you finish.
confirmations from Bungie are not always like solid forever.
And that's a valid point. That statement I don't have a problem with.
The thing that I'm bringing up is the idea that will Cade 6 be wiped and we will get Cade 7? I've seen this concept so much this week.
No.
Will we get an access to Deepstone Crypt?
Okay, we could get access. So here's the only way I could maybe see this happening, and this is like me being super stretchy on details. Is like if there is some way in which they twist and to be fair, they wouldn't be twisting it because they haven't actually explained this. But if we get an explanation of Deepstone Crypt as a digital storage house of the self, but it won't be Cade. That's the thing, is like if we find a digital copy of Cade 6 or whatever, and we reintroduce him into a new body, or however you want to spin this, unless there's an uplink somewhere within the Deepstone Crypt and the Exos that it is attached to, like, sans that, you're not going to get a Cade 7. Now, that being said, is it possible? I mean, I guess. Sure.
Well,
anything's possible in science fiction, though. So, to be fair.
In the like the kind of the photo that's the thumbnail for the Forsaken, it doesn't show a Guardian carrying Cade, though.
Well, it's believed to be a Guardian, to be clear.
Yeah. They're just it's
a cloaked figure.
It's a hunter carrying Cade is what it looks like.
It's a hunter that looks a lot like Shiro. Let's put it
right.
that way.
Yeah.
Well, let's just say right now, like,
that could be the Vanguard too.
You could drag Cade somewhere, and if we're talking a medium for data transfer, like that can be arranged. Like, that's not the problem. I don't think that's the problem. If you go back to the Positronic brain,
if it's a hardware issue, it's solvable. But
exactly.
I don't think
my point. The Positronic brain is a volatile. It's volatile memory. It needs a charge across it to sustain all that information. The architecture isn't static, I guess is what I'm saying. So
right.
It's going to be tough. It's going to be tough without the ghosts to constantly recreate and transmit the you know, not, I don't want to say physical, but the actual, you know, effects that make him him. It's going to be tough. So I'm going to go ahead and say he's dead.
From a storytelling standard, Cade, not necessarily Cade, but somebody needs to die.
Someone needs to die from a storytelling perspective because it needs to add weight. And this is a conversation I think I had over on Twitter too. It's like, look, I'm not saying I want it, but at this point it needs, because right now it's the same thing as Chewbacca dying in Star Wars, right? In the expanded universe. In the expanded universe, Chewbacca dies and everyone loses their minds. Like, everyone was pissed. R.A. Salvatore was getting death threats and, you know, all this stuff.
Okay.
And this was an expanded universe. And this is exactly what was happening, was basically Skywalker Ranch realized that the story was losing interest because they knew that the heroes would always survive.
Right.
Yeah. You know that the hero is always going to walk away. It suddenly, you know, it's not that it gets, it's not that it removes the fun, but it lessens the impact of what's being told. And so now what this is doing is this is sledgehammering back into your brain the fact that nothing is safe. This is a world full of danger. And, you know, that to me is an excellent tool. Can it be overused? Yeah, look at Game of Thrones, for God's sake. It's like every other character. You don't get you get desensitized to it, and that's overuse. But to be fair to Bungie and their writing team, what major character has died in the past 5 years in Destiny? Like, there hasn't been one.
Yeah.
I mean,
but I mean, seriously, there hasn't been a major character on our side that has died. There has been NPCs.
To be fair, though, it's not a game. It's not a game of NPC driven narrative.
Right.
Well, and that's true. And there's also the added component of, you know, like the whole immortality with Guardians, and I get that, and that
I agree with you though.
That is definitely, you know, seen in the jovial manner, the graveyard humor that, you know, a lot of Guardians have. They don't care. I mean, that's the whole, you know, dispute between the Reef and the city, for God's sakes, is because of that attitude and how the Awoken have no concept of it. But that isn't to say, I mean, you have stories of Andal, and, you know, that devastated the city. And so, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm like, I would, so if they don't kill him permanently, they need to make sure that it is really well written, like really well explained.
I will say this. I'm not a gigantic fan of killing my favorite character in the whole franchise, but the one way that I will be okay with this from a storytelling perspective, I want to see the strains that this puts on the interpersonal relationships. I want to see Zavala break. I want to see Zavala break.
Well, I want to see Ikora. I want to see the fire team. I want to see, but, and to be fair, we have seen that. We've seen the strain that they did with the entire intro, where they got their guardianship ripped away. And I think that's where I'm actually excited to see the Seeds of Discord, because, you know, we're getting introduced into this world where the Vanguard is not such a, you know, we've been Destiny 1, the Vanguard was always kind of this portrayed as this pristine thing. And I mean, they had their ups and downs, but as a whole, they were good. Well, Destiny 2 came around, and there's not so many good, like there's debatable events. And now, you know, and then we also had the component of like the actual psychological turmoil of, you know, Zavala losing his mind over, you know, his loss of guardianship. Ikora questioning what it means to be a guard, you know, like all this stuff was happening. And we already had that psychological like trauma introduced. And so I think that's where I'm hoping that we see a lot, because that is going to also show you character development. You know, that's where you see 3D dimensional characters being developed and introduced.
Now, all this being said, Cade being killed happens really, really early in this update.
Well,
Bungie...
it happens in the trailer, but it apparently happens a little bit later. It does happen in the first mission, but it doesn't happen.
happens in the, yeah.
It doesn't happen the way that we see it, also.
Correct. It is not the same exact camera angles and stuff like that, not even the exact same characters around necessarily, except for, obviously, Aldrin. But beyond that, though, Bungie has got a lot of story left to tell besides just the vengeance story. And they can play around with a lot of different things and a lot of different ideas with this whole idea of getting revenge on Aldrin and the Barons. There's a lot of room for them to work if they choose to go those directions. So theoretically, there could be a miraculous thing at the end where Cade comes back out and is like all buddy-buddy like Ocean's 11 with Zavala, like we get at the end of the Red War, which I would be like, I love Cade. I love Nathan Fillion as Cade. But if that happened, I would actually think it would cheapen the entire expansion.
Well, I'm going to say you can't.
It removes the weight.
That's why I think everybody.
It removes the weight.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's why everybody on this case of they're just going to bring him back is like dead wrong, because Bungie at this point I think knows better that if they did pull something like that, they're going to get just straight crucified for it. Like there's no other way I can really put it.
Well, it's just
if they
it just
put all
would.
the community
I mean,
through it too.
Well, there's that, but there's also like I don't know. I go back to just the integrity of the story that they're trying to create. I think would just be absolutely destroyed. Like I just personally, I think that's just not the right move.
On the flip side of that, though, I really hope that this is a little bit more nuanced than Cade is dead, avenge Cade at the end.
I think
I will tell you that it is.
I really will be surprised if it's not.
I would really love for it to not be
the snark line that he delivers when he dies is like
Not even that though. There have been some database entries that have popped up.
The
journals that have possibly been out there. No, there's some additional stuff from like Andal that we hear of. I will not say much more than that.
Because that was data mined.
Yeah, and at that point, like if that is something that we are going to officially get in Forsaken, then the tale of Cade 6 is far from over. And that's going to be the cool thing, is like seeing it from a different perspective.
And if anyone wants to read those, we actually have them collected. So there's some good ones.
That's why I still get this feeling like, yes, we want to see. I have a feeling that Cade is like good and gone at this point. Like there's no way he's going to end up coming back. But the idea is that he is going to carry on throughout like the story. Otherwise, it's there. Like they've got it invested at this point. And again, if it is going to turn out to be anything like what they are talking about right now or showcasing for us, I am all in.
I'm excited. Also, how's your sister?
Oh my goodness.
Best closing line ever.
Burn.
Well, guys, you want to wrap it up and get some shout-outs?
Yeah, I think at this point that's
some shout-outs.
I know, Beer. Justin's getting tired. I can tell.
It's past his bedtime.
It's past his bedtime.
I'm still here, Blue. I'm still here.
He can still hear you, Blue. Careful.
Oh man, Beard, what do you got for us?
This week, actually, I was very, 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 very busy. Oh wait, that's nothing new for me. Never mind. So the first thing goes out to a guy that I'm not sure if he does watch the show or not. I know that he watches my channel, but it's a guy called the Gamertron. The Gamertron show is a place that actually does like video game critique and stuff like that, reports on news, etc. quite a bit. But he actually had me on for a segment and has been somebody that I've wanted to actually connect with further than what we've been able to between like channel comments and everything for a while. We sat and all of a sudden 3 hours went by. We'll put it that way.
Nice.
So it was very good to actually be able to sit down and talk with him finally, as just like a creator to creator, but more so like an acquaintance trying to get to know somebody else again. And that's one of for me, the best thing about doing content creation or otherwise. The most the best thing about it for me has obviously been meeting everybody the way that I have. Like that has been the best part about all of it, present company included. I would probably not be doing this all that often if it was something where it was just like constant bickering or otherwise. I would be a lot less motivated. But the fact that I can meet these people that are either like-minded or even counter-minded to myself, and we're able to have discussion, have discourse or otherwise, and better ourselves as people collectively. The fact that like Gamertron and I could just sit and talk for 3 hours without any initial concept or idea behind us, except for the fact that, hey, we've got some similar interests with each other, is just the best thing about content creation or being able to just talk to each other and be on the same level. So, big shout out to him. The second one actually goes out to Xanafin. Xanafin actually had asked me to be on his That's Not Quite a Podcast, I think is what it's called. I feel terrible now because I can't remember the exact name. I will actually look it up here.
Oh, the Drunk Lore one?
The Drunk Lore one, yeah. That's the thing that he's been kind of pushing on for that one.
He's had a lot of really good guests while you're looking this up. He's had,
Yeah,
I know he's had a few.
I'm trying to figure out a time to get on as well.
Yeah, he's had some of the guys from DGS on it. I know Beard was on it this week. I was supposed to be on it last Saturday, but I had heat stroke, so I had to cancel. I promised him I would be on it after Guardian Con sometime, so I'll be on there. Blue's getting on there. It's going to be a drinking, fun, spouting random of lore time, and I kind of want to talk to you, Beard, about what I'm getting into, because I'm a little scared.
Oh, let me tell you, it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yay!
But it is he's definitely gotten a very good set of people in. They've had very good discussions and just the same kind of thing though, which is one thing that I kind of love about that show, is just there's no, as much as I appreciate the more organized or tried to be organized focus, no pun intended, of like what we have here. Versus like what we have at what they have over at Barely a Destiny show. It's just all, here we are, here's a small topic, now ramble about it. I'll give you a small like a small preview into like what him and I had talked about, because it was just the two of us. But we had started with just like getting to know each other, etc. And we had basically talked about Mass Effect and how that impacted each of our lives for probably a good 20 or 30 minutes, just bouncing back and forth between like that and how that otherwise like changed the gaming space for us, nice. Along with other gamings, along with like what our preferred drinks are. And we didn't really get into the topic of discussion. It's like 45 minutes in.
I love those kind of conversations.
Yeah, so it was. It's a very, very laid back kind of show. Expect some slurring because I had bought a bottle of Fireball that morning, and I had actually gone through half of it by the time the show was over. What's terrible is that after like 2 hours and carrying on the conversation for about 3, I still barely felt anything. Curse my Irish blood. But that's it's It's a fun little show. It's very different from this one, so you get to hear, especially with, I know Green's going to reschedule sometime. You better. And I know Xanafin has actually talked that he wants to get all of us on there. So to hear
Looks
again,
like Ishtar Collective people are going to be on there too.
Yep. Yeah. So we're going to be able to hear some different. You're going to be able to hear some different sides and perspectives of the people that you like to hear from or know within the lore community that you otherwise don't get to hear sloshed or otherwise, because that's the case with me. I try not to be drunk when I'm on these things. But when I'm told to be drunk on a podcast, I will do so. Look, Justin, look, you getting tipsy is not the same as you getting drunk, okay?
Well, speaking of which, Justin, do you have shout-outs for us?
Yeah, I do have some shout-outs. First of all, I have shout-outs to the cutest word ever, which is tipsy. And I would also like to dedicate my second shout out to the humble hot dog, not the sandwich.
Oh my God, he's still on it.
So, also a serious shout out. I would like to give a great big shout out to a follower of the show who reached out to me on Twitter. Matt Grundy, thank you for the amazing words. You helped turn around a cruddy, turdy day. And, the sentiment is very much reciprocated. Basically, he said I was awesome and I make his life much better. So,
and you're funny. He's funny.
Well,
poop on you. Poop on you, Jared.
That last part can be argued. But,
what, the fart noise or?
I guess. I mean, the tone sounded really off. Like, maybe you should work on that a little bit. Like,
you're good.
Come on now.
You're good people, Brett Grizzly.
Hey, thanks for that. I got to show you something after the show. Remind me that I have to show you something after the show.
No,
that segue sounds dangerous.
Doesn't it?
Totally.
If you're not familiar with the tweet, it's basically he said like laughing at the show like helped him through some tough times, and basically if you're going through a tough time, find something to laugh at or someone. I don't care. Laugh at me. I don't care. Doesn't matter. Just get through. Just get through.
Yeah.
Green, what about you?
I have two shout outs. One is another shout out to Mr. Kyle 9 with the awesome finding the hidden message in plain sight, as well as just being a good sport and being a really good guy. The second one is another announcement about the July 7th St. 14 Project charity stream.
Bungie Day.
Where?
Bungie Day.
Yes.
Bungie Day.
They are doing a Bungie Day stream, and quite a few different people on there. Belle's going to be on there for Belle Bunny. Cobb 1's going to be on there.
Mm-hmm.
Guys from Hand Grenades. Why can't I say their podcast
Horseshoes and hand grenades.
Thank you. Horseshoes and Hand Grenades. Elmer's going to be on there. Elmer Fudd's going to be on there.
What?
As well as Xanifan. They're all going to be on there. There's quite a few other ones. Issachol's going to be on there. She was actually recently in Vegas helping with the first esports Destiny tournament, which was really cool.
I heard that went really well, actually.
Yeah, there was
after a few things.
Yeah, there was some things that happened, but it all turned out all right, and some positive things came out of the whole tournament, and it's exciting. So
I'm actually anxious for next year because I've already been weaseled into a couple of possible thoughts that are going on. I would probably suspect that for those that can't get down towards Florida for Guardian Con, you will have an additional option. I will put it that way.
Heard that as well. It's not solidified yet.
No, take everything I just said with a grain of salt, but just the fact that you guys will have like a second location to kind of work with, just keep your eyes open for that in the future. That's all I'm going to say, because I know that there is a lot going into that in the background right now, especially being like It's fun. Like, people refer to me and talk to me about stuff, and I'm like, why are you doing this? They're like, well, you're respected in the community. I'm like, I am? When did this happen? Hang on a second.
If I'm the voice of reason, we're in a dangerous spot.
Exactly my thought. Thank you very much. But no, like, I get to hear about, like, all these little bits and pieces that happen behind the scenes. And I only like to state them for the sake of, like, getting information back to you guys to be like, hey, if you like conventions, keep your eyes on something, especially Destiny related.
Yes.
So at that point, like, this will be a big deal if they can get it going. Anyway, point over. Sorry to interrupt you, Green.
No worries. Sorry, I was getting ready to type at somebody in chat because if Doom for Zombies 16 16 does what he says in chat at Guardian Con, I am buying him a drink.
Uh-oh. Hang on.
I will buy you a drink, sir. So that you are my third shout out for being awesome like that.
You got a shot on me too. I'm gonna be broke after this trip.
Oh
My
God, yeah. But Guardian Con's so close, guys. 2 weeks.
I know.
Yes.
All right. And then, of course, for a reminder, keep an eye out on social media for the questions for next week. We'll figure out one and get that out to you guys as soon as I possibly can. And then also, yes, next week will be the Extra Lore podcast for Star Wars. We are running the Extra Lore poll in chat right now. That's going to be reset this weekend. And then, as everyone has said, Guardian Con is, 2 weeks at this point? So we'll see you guys in Florida, and hope that everyone has safe travels there and has a blast of a time. And we'll probably talk about it again next week. So we're going to run through an outro, and then we'll stay around for a little bit of an after show. With that, we'll begin to wrap the chat up. Thank you again to those over on Twitch for coming to spend your evening with us. If you'd like to join us for the live streaming of the episodes, please be sure to give us a follow over on twitch.tv/focusfirechat. Links to our episode archives can be found at www.focusfirechat.com. Please be sure to email us at focusfirechat@gmail.com with any comments or questions for our team concerning the podcast, and let us know how we're doing by giving us some feedback and a rating over on iTunes as well. Also, be sure to check out all of our amazing partner podcasts within the Guardian Radio Network over on theguardiansofdestiny.com. So until next time, focus your fire and may your light shine bright.